right. I want to just go back over some of the integer exam items to I want you to show you my approach. So, what we've been talking about, when we've been doing multiply and divide, is I always do two steps. So the first step that I look at is what am I going to do with the sign? Now, multiplication and division had a set of rules, but so does add and subtract. Then I'm going to do the math that is involved here. And the math is going to depend on the signs. Okay, so when I look at this problem here, I ask myself, what am I going to do with the signs? Well, what I notice is that the signs are the same. Okay, so that information tells me what I need to do with the numbers. And by the numbers, I mean 66 and 1. The signs are not only the same, but they are both positive. So that tells me that my answer is going to be positive. So I've got same signs, so that tells me to add these because it's same. 66 plus 1 is 67. They're both positive, so that tells me that this is positive 67, and that's my answer. Okay? And so the fact that the signs are the same tells me I'm going to add. Because both signs are positive, tells me that my result will be positive. Okay? So let's take a look on this next one. Okay, again. So I look at the signs. The signs will tell me what I need to do with these two numbers. And I notice that they're the same. Now this problem's different because they're both negative and positive rather than positive. So because they're both the same though, it doesn't change the fact that I'm going to add those two numbers. So I take these two numbers and I ignore the negative for a second. I take these two numbers and I say, 64 plus 25. I'm going to add the two numbers. So I just 64 plus 25. If you can do it in your head, great. If not, then write it out. Take the time. I'm going to add the two numbers. Why? Because they're the same sign. So when I add the two numbers, I get 89. So then I ask myself, okay, they were the same. What was the sign? Oh, it was minus. So it's going to be negative. Sorry, not minus, negative. So it's going to be negative 89. So same sign tells me to add. And then same sign R also, in this case, tells me that it's going to be negative. So it's going to be negative 89. And so that's the approach then when we have these same signs. So I look at this next problem, and yeah, I know they're kind of the same category here. And when you get your test, it'll be a little bit more mixed up. But the idea here, you'll get the habit that it is the same sign. They're both positive in this case. So it's positive, so kind of tells me what the answer is going to be. And we're going to add the two numbers. So I come over here and I say, what is 31 plus 9? Oh, that's 10, carry the 1, 4. So it's going to be 40, and we know it's positive. And I can put the positive there, or I can just put 40. It's invisible math. It's implied that if I put 40, that it's positive. Okay, so that's how to deal with those that have same sign. So then we had 5 different types of problems, by the way, on the test. There's 5 different types of problems. So there's, on this particular thing, there's 3 of each. So this next category of problems, I'm going to go ahead and put a line here. The next category of problems here is the category of opposites. Now I can take a look at, some of the sign rules, but really, if we are looking at the idea of opposites, it means that we have the same amount, just different signs or different direction from 0. So if I go plus 34 and minus 34, they're opposites. Okay, one's positive, one's negative, but it's still the same distance from 0. Okay, so the special property of opposites, we could do this on the number line, go 34 one way and 34 back the other way, but whether we do it the long way or kind of the short way and recognizing that they just cancel it completely out, the idea of opposites is that the answer is going to be 0. So if I have 34 plus a negative 34, it's going to be 0. If I have negative 100 plus 100, it is going to be, yeah, you guessed it, 0. If I have 11 plus a negative of, and it doesn't matter if the negative is first or second. It doesn't matter if there's numbers in between. If I can find a pair of opposites, they're going to cancel each other out. So I've got 11 plus negative 11, so that's simply going to be 0. And that is, and believe it or not, yeah, we got some that missed it, and I'm not sure why. I'll have to go back over, but I don't get to see your work necessarily always, so I'm not quite sure where the disconnect was on that. But if it's opposite, it's going to be 0. Okay. Now we move on to this next type of problem. This next type of problem is sign numbers that are not opposite. Okay. But what we notice here is, I go back to the top two. The sign, I ask myself first, what is going on with the signs? The signs are different, and this is where this is different than the other problems. So one thing I know is that I now have to subtract the numbers to find out what my number is going to be. They're different. I'm going to go negative direction for a while, and I'm going to go positive direction for a while, and my answer then ends up being the difference of the two. I could look at this as having 43 red tiles and 62 green tiles. 43 of those are going to form a 0 pair and cancel out. Okay, so I can think about that in my head, but here's the deal. If they're different signs, you're going to subtract. So how do I subtract this? I've got 43 and 62. First of all, I'm not worried about the sign right now. I'm just going to find the difference. So when I find the difference, I have 62 and I have 43. I take the bigger of those two. It doesn't matter if one was negative, one is positive. I just take the bigger one. I make sure I put that on top. Because when we subtract, and we're doing this method of subtraction, we need to have the larger number on top. Even though one might have happened to be negative over there, we ignore that sign. So I'm going to do some borrowing. 12 minus 3 is 9. That makes that 5. 5 minus 4 is 1. So I end up with 19. So here's the trickier part. What kind of 19 is it? So is it going to be positive 19 or negative 19? So you have to look over here, and if you're picturing this, say those are red tiles, and I'm not able to reach my, okay. So we say these are, gosh darn it, green tiles. So let me make this smaller so I can keep that all in. All right. So this, wow, that was kind of cool. Okay. So these are green tiles. Okay. So I had negative 43 and I have positive 62. Do I have more red or more green? Like if I cancel some out, would I have more green left over or would I have red left over? Well, the 62 was bigger and the 62 was positive. So in that case, I would have had 19 green tiles left over when they canceled out. So the sign has to be the bigger absolute value, meaning which one had more, negatives or positives? Okay, if we are officially comparing, we know that if we had to say 43, 62, you know that the negative is smaller. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the magnitude of it, how big it is. We're basically talking about the absolute value. Which one has a bigger absolute value? Well, we look at this, and in this case, it ends up being the same, 43, 62. Yeah, that one ends up being the same. But sometimes that idea reverses, okay? So the idea here then is that which one was bigger? Which one had more? And it was the positives that had more, so it's going to be positive 19. Okay, and so that's how that works. Yeah, I know that's kind of weird. Let's look at this next one. Again, so I've got 91 and negative 32. I have different signs, so I'm going to subtract. Okay, so different signs, I'm going to subtract. Nice. Okay, so I'm just going to bring them over here, 91, and then I'm going to do minus 32 because the 91 is the bigger value than 32 I'm going to put on top. So 11 minus 2 is 9, borrowed 8, 5. So I've got 59. And then I think to myself, which one had more? This one was positive. This one was negative. I had 91 positives and 32 negatives. Okay, the positives had more. It's going to be positive 59. So which one was bigger? Okay, so, okay, and so that's, it takes a minute to kind of figure that out. I use color coding. It really helps. So oops, I did that wrong. Okay, so I've got this one's my negative, and then come over here and make this one my positive. Okay, so which one has more? So after a while, I'm not writing all this down. After a while, I look and go, oh, hey, which one has more? So I have different signs. So I subtract, and positive has more. And so I'm just looking at that going, oh, there's more positive, so it's going to be positive, but I'm still going to have to subtract. So 75 minus 45, 0, 7 minus 4 is 30, so it's 30. And then that's going to be my answer. Okay, so that's how that works. Okay, now we're going to move on to a different type of problem, but it's actually going to look similar to some other problems that we've done. Okay, so it's a little bit more of a mix-up from what we've been doing. Now, what's interesting about these were all from a type, 7, 8, 9, all from a type specifically saying that positives had more. Okay, so that's not always the case. So we're going to see that on something else here, but let's go ahead and look at this one. All right, so same, sign. So we're looking at that sign. It's -6 and -6. If I were to color code that, you can see it's -6 and -6. And if they're the same color, I'm adding them up, right? So same sign, I'm going to add, add, and we see that they're going to be positive. Nope. Gosh darn, I make mistakes, guys. So, and we see they're going to be negatives because they're both negative. So because they're both negative, I'm going to add the two numbers. 6 plus 6 is 12, and it's going to be -12. Okay, so -12. Again, this next problem, same sign, both negative, kind of an interesting pattern. So both negative, and -2 and -3, same sign, so we're going to add. So same, add, and they're both negative. So 2 plus 3 is 5. That should be pretty straightforward. And then the same thing, and in this case, this must have been the pattern. They're both negative. So, okay. So in that case, -7, -2, they're same sign. So I'm going to add. 7 and 2 is 9. They're both negative. So it's going to be -9. All right, so that's that pattern of and they'll be mixed up. They're probably going to be scrambled on your follow-up, but just so you can see. Now this one's interesting because I don't think this was meant to be the pattern, but you can see here I've got the -9 and I've got the +9, and automatically you're seeking opposites. So we've seen this pattern before, cancel each other out, 0. Won't go into more detail. Now here's one that's different sign. So the first thing about different sign is I'm going to subtract, and I'm going to look and see who had more. Who had more? So on my green is 10. My red is, I know it's pink. I'm using pink instead of red. I like the pink. Is 12. So I've got 10 positives and 12 negatives. And I kind of use this as kind of to, give you guys a little bit of context. It's like I had 10 people show up to the party. I've got -12 people, negative. 10 positive people show up, 12 negative people show up. Who's more? Who has more? The negatives or the positives? Who's gonna weigh each other out here? There's gonna be more negative people at the party. I think this is gonna be a negative party. That's one way to think about it. Just to kind of context I try to tell little stories to kind of help myself remember stuff like that. So it's different. I'm going to subtract, and I notice that I have more negatives, and so I know that my answer is going to be negative. So more negative, so my answer is going to be negative, but I have to still subtract. Now in this case, I'm just going to write 12 minus 10. Well, yeah, but the 12 is negative. No, when I do the subtraction, I ignore what the sign was. I'm just finding the difference. So 12 minus 10 is 2. I determined that, yes, the 12 was negative and there's more, so it's actually going to be negative 2. Okay, so the sign is determined by the bigger, which one had more, but the actual difference, I'm just basically just basic subtraction. So on this one here, I've got 11 negatives. People at the party, 6 positive people at the party. It's definitely a party I don't want to go to because those positive people are so outnumbered. So difference, we're going to subtract. So I go 11 minus 6 is 5. But the bigger, there was more negative. So it's going to be negative 5. Okay. Now I know that's kind of a goofy way to look at it, but when it comes to these different ones, it's really important for you to say, okay, this different, and I had more whatever. The sign of the answer is always going to be which one had more. On the sames, it's actually kind of straightforward. It's add. The sign's going to be whatever they shared. You have negative 6 plus a negative 6. How do you get positive 12, right? So it's a sign you share. Okay, and so that's how you do this. Take some time to look over that. Take time to really get more math and practice those dotted line problems. All right. I'm out. Good luck on the follow-up.